Hello, welcome to your Semester 1 English exam review. In this video, I'm going to give you a short presentation of everything that we took throughout Semester 1. If you want to find your semester exam review worksheet, you can refer to our school website, which is www.ischooli.com. Click on your grade and then weekly handouts. From there, you'll be taken to the drive, and you won't only find the semester exam review worksheet, but everything that we've taken throughout the semester, any handout, any resource that you might be looking for, please refer to the website. Everything will be found there. So here's a brief description of the topics that we covered in Semester 1. This will be available as well on your semester exam review worksheet. So go ahead and have a read through and let's begin. So the first story that we took this semester was called Courage in the Water. You can find this story in Unit 1 in your progress books, and the genre is realistic fiction. A realistic fiction is a literary text that reflects life as it could be lived, although some elements are from the author's imagination. So sometimes characters can be real life people who had real life challenges. However, the events could be made up by the author. So therefore it is a realistic fiction. It could be based on real events, however there are many events that might be exaggerated or didn't really happen. The purpose for us reading the story was to find explicit and implicit details. An explicit detail is a detail that is stated directly, and an implicit detail is a detail that is implied, and you would have to navigate through the text to find out the exact meaning or what the author was trying to relay. So here's the vocabulary from Courage in the Water. If you want to find this list or any other vocabulary list, you can always go to the drive and you'll find everything under English class resources. So the next story we took was called The Courage of John Adams. You can also find this in Unit 1 and in your progress books. The genre is historical fiction. Now, historical fiction is sort of like a realistic fiction where they have real life characters and the story is based on a real event. However, it is based on historical events, so that is the only difference. So as you can see, one of the characters was John Adams. He was a real life person and he was a prominent one as well. But maybe the events that happened in the story weren't necessarily true or exaggerated. The purpose of this story was for us to find the main idea of every page or every paragraph to simply build a small summary on the story. Again, here are the words that we took from this story. So last but not least, the most fascinating story we had this semester was called Into the Unknown. You can also find this in Unit 1 in your progress books. The reason why it was so much fun was because it was a multi-act play, so we were all able to take a role and act it out. The interesting thing about a multi-act play is that the only way the plot can be propelled is through dialogue. Another interesting fact about it is that a multi-act play contains more than one act, or it has more scenes. Usually in each scene, each act, the setting changes and new characters are introduced. So it was really fun because there was an element of surprise. The purpose of this was to find elements of the setting, plot, and characters that helped create an engaging story that communicated the author's theme. Here are the words from Into the Unknown. Now moving on to grammar, our first lesson was about the present progressive and the simple present. Those of you who are confused with the term progressive, it is the same as continuous. This is just the British way of saying things. Just to briefly explain the present progressive describes an action that is happening right now or in the extended present time. So that means that it's happening right now, and words that you can look for to determine whether or not it is in the present progressive are words like now, words like always, words like at the moment. And if we look at this line down here, you'll see that it is just happening now in the present. It didn't start in the past, it's not going into the future, it's just happening now. So if we look at the sentence, it says they are visiting their friends now. Do we know if they did yesterday? Do they know if they do this daily? Do we know if they're going to continue to do this? We don't know. We just know that it is happening now. And the base form of this is simply verb to be. In this case, it's are. And the ing form of the verb. Now, moving on to the simple present, which is the complete opposite. The simple present describes an action that happens regularly. So as we can see, our sentence here, she always wears jeans. This is not something that she's only doing now. This is not something that she's only doing in the past or in the future. It is something that she does continuously. If we look at here in our client, it happens regularly. It doesn't change. The base form here is, okay, verb plus s or es depending on the verb. Words that can give it away to us are words like always, regularly. I'll just go ahead and write that here. Regularly and usually. So these words help let me know that these are things that happen constantly. Now the way to turn each tense into a negative statement is simply just by adding one word, and that is not. So as you can see, we've added not in between the verb to be and the ing form of the verb in the present progressive. And this is clearly a present progressive because of the ing form of the verb. And in a simple present, I've added it between the form of do and then the action verb. Okay? So just to make things a lot easier, simply contract them. Aren't, do not, or sorry, don't. If we look at the sentences, you can also find out through context what tense they are in. They are not feeling comfortable. Right now, they are not feeling comfortable. Hopefully, they'll feel comfortable later. We don't know if they will. If I look at the second sentence, it says people don't arrive at a party on time. This sentence is stating something that happens regularly, that people do not usually come to a party on time. Let me just display the form of each sentence. Okay, let's move on. Now moving on to questions. How can I use the present progressive and the simple past in question form? So let's look at the first one. Is Dan giving a party? Now what tense is this in? It's clearly, if I look at it just through structure, I can see that it is in the present progressive. Okay, how do I know this? Because the verb here is in ing form. So now the only thing that changes in a question form is that I put the verb to be first as opposed to the subject. Okay, and then I put the action verb, the ing form of the verb after. So we just kind of switched it up, and that is how you get a question form. What is Jason doing? This is how I use how I make a WH question with the present progressive. All I did was add what in front of the verb to be, which is in this case. I still have the subject in between the verb to be and the action, the ing form of the verb. Do people arrive early? Now, simply looking at this in a structure sense, I can see that this is obviously the simple present because I don't see an ing form of any verb. Now this question is asking me, do people arrive early usually? Not at this moment. So do people arrive early? I have the form of do here. I have the subject again in between the form of do and the verb, the action verb. To turn it into a WH question, what do people do in Marty's culture? Again, this is simple present because I'm asking you about something that they usually do. Again, I add my WH in front of my form of do, and I put my subject in the middle and my verb after, which in this case is do. So we have do and do twice. So now moving on to the past progressive and the simple past. So let's discuss the past progressive a little bit. To briefly define it, the past progressive describes an action that was in progress at a specific time in the past. It focuses on the duration of a past action. Now focus on the word here, duration. Whereas the simple past focuses on the completion of a past action. Now what does that mean? So if I'm looking at a past progressive, let's speak briefly about the form. We have was, were plus ing form of the verb. So basically I have the verb to be in the past. If I have a sentence like he was traveling around the world. Well, I know that he was traveling around the world, but do I know that he finished? No, I don't. I know when it happened in the past, but I don't know if he had ever stopped traveling around the world. Whereas if I look at the simple past, he traveled around the world, and let's look at the structure here. We have the D or ED form of the verb, so basically just the past tense form of a verb. I know that he traveled and he stopped. If I go ahead and draw a line for you guys right here, I'll label this here past. Here is past. I know that he traveled around the world and he stopped. See, if I look at the past progressive, he could have traveled around the world multiple times in the past, and I wouldn't know if he stopped or if he didn't. So that's just it, simply put. So the question now is, can I use the simple past and the past progressive in the same sentence? And how does it affect my sentence? Well, the answer is yes, you may use it when you're using words like when and while with your tenses. So let's look at the sentence here. At 10 o'clock yesterday, I was watching a movie. If I look at the line, I can see that this is something that was continuously happening. Yesterday, I was watching a movie. Now, I was watching a movie when I heard a strange noise. If I look at the word when, I can see here that something, which was watching a movie, was interrupted by something else. And I look at my client, I can see that I was also still continuously watching the movie when something else happened, which was heard a strange noise. Now pay attention. This clause here is in the simple past. It started and it ended. I didn't continuously hear this strange noise, whereas I did continuously watch the movie. So while this action was progressing, this action started and finished. There's another way that you can say this, and that is by using the word while. So there are many ways that you can write sentences like this. So for example, if you want to go ahead and use when in the beginning, you can use when in the beginning. Just make sure that when you are separating your clauses, you have a comma in between them both, like you see here with while. I have a comma. While I was watching a movie, I heard a strange noise. I heard a strange noise while I was watching a movie. When I was watching a movie, I heard a strange noise, or I was watching a movie when I heard a strange noise. They all mean the same thing, just that depending on your clause, depending on where you use these words in the clause, you have to use a comma. So can I use the past progressive and the past progressive at the same time? Well, the answer is yes, you can, if you want to show two actions that were happening in the past at the same time. So if I look at my sentence here, it says, while I was reading, my brother was cooking. Nothing happened before the other. These two actions were happening at the same time in the past. I was reading while he was cooking. Nothing ended before. Well, actually, I'm not sure if anything started or ended before. I just know that these two things happened at the same time. So be careful. Sometimes things can get a little bit confusing. So let's look at the first sentence. He was doing his homework when his mother came home. Now, we briefly discussed this earlier. This is simply the simple past interrupting the past progressive. We look at our client. He was doing his homework continuously when his mother came home. He started and he continued. Easy, right? So let's look at the second sentence. He did his homework when his mother came home. Now this is where it gets a little bit confusing, because you sit there and you ponder, what happened first? I'm so confused. Well, you can easily determine this by drawing a line as you see here. He did his homework when his mother came home. Again, when here is a major player in this sentence. So I can tell by looking at the word when that he started his homework when his mother came home. Now, had it been vice versa, his mother came home when he did his homework, it would mean that his mother came home when he started doing his homework. Do you see what I mean here? So pay attention. When the simple past is used at the same time in the sentence, you need to, at this point, determine when something happened before the other. So now on to used to and would. Now both of these mean the same thing. They both show repeated past activities and they only differ slightly. So for example, used to usually shows something that is no longer true. So if I were to write about someone's appearance, like he used to wear glasses when he was younger, I wouldn't say he would wear glasses, because that is showing an action and that is showing something that no longer happens, not something that is no longer true. When we're looking at the verb form, we see here that it is simply the base form of the verb. If I wanted to use this in a negative statement, I wouldn't say used to. I would simply omit the D. So as you can see here, he didn't use to study, and that would make it correct. Which negative form is more common when being used to? Well, I would use the word never usually. You could use used to in the present or future form. This is false because used to is used to show something that happened in the past that I used to do repeatedly. So there's no way that I can use to do something in the future. So let's determine what each sentence shows. When I was 7, I would watch cartoons every Saturday morning. This no longer happens. I no longer watch cartoons in the morning. However, I could say I used to watch cartoons every Saturday morning and it would still be considered fluent. I used to love Power Ranger cartoons. It's no longer true. I no longer like Power Rangers. So just to dig a little bit more into used to, when I was a kid, I used to watch SpongeBob. My brother used to watch MTV. My sister didn't used to watch TV. So here we have 2 affirmative statements and 1 negative statement. I'm just going to write the form of them both. So as I can see, it doesn't change. Used to doesn't change depending on the noun. So there is no change if you have a plural noun or a singular noun. I have form used to plus base form of verb. Negative statement, I have did not plus used to. So that is the only difference, just that you omit the D from used to when you're using it in a negative form. Same goes for would. It doesn't change according to the noun before it. So if it's singular or plural, it remains would, and it would be the same thing as used to, except I would write would instead of used to, and base form of verb.